It's a bird emergency. Here we are. Bit of a unusual experiment for me. I'm in the studio, and my big, big, big part of the global big day was a couple of really nice cockatoos in my local park. I've been podcasting all day, so yeah. But look, in the other screen, joining me, Terry Townsend, who was the subject of today's podcast, which was celebrating World Migratory, Migratory Bird Day, as well as being the global big day. So for bird nerds, you know what that is all about. Terry, tell us exactly where you are and welcome.
Well, thank you, Grant. Yeah, this is a bit of an experiment coming to you live from the field. So I'm actually where every birder wants to be on World Migratory Bird Day, which is outside birding. And I'm in a sort of wetland area just in the northeast of Beijing. So it's hard to believe I'm in the capital city of the world's biggest economy, almost. Second biggest. So I'm just going to put the camera around just to show you exactly.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to do that. Okay.
So it's a little wetland area. It's part of the Chaobai river system, which is a north-south river that runs from Miyun Reservoir, and it's a bit of a migratory corridor because it runs north-south, and because it's a wetland area, you know, the edge of the water is always a good place to see some of the birds that are resting here, and then it's also a great place to see birds migrating overhead. So there's been a fairly steady stream of interesting birds going over. I've had black stork, had a big group of swifts, including Beijing swifts and Pacific swifts, and one white-throated needletail in there, 2 northern house martins in there, which is a pretty rare bird here. And then around the edge of the water itself, there's quite a number of eastern yellow wagtails, Richard's pipits, red-throated pipit, a few stone chats, snipe, green sandpiper, wood sandpiper. So a really nice mixture. Yeah, great day to be out as well. Lovely blue sky, as you can see. A bit windy, but apart from that, perfect.
Now, were you taking part in anything official with the Global Big Day? Like, were you part of a team, and are you checking off your numbers today?
Yeah, I'm actually part of 2 teams. So we've got we're participating in the Global Birding Big Day. So we have a team from Beijing participating in that, and we've got a few people dotted around in different places over the capital. And then I'm also part of a BirdLife team for the eBird Big Day and Global Birding Big Day as well. So, and we've got people around the world in that team, in Australia, in US, in South Africa, in Europe. So it's wonderful to connect this network of birders around the world to have this special day to celebrate. So it's always a special day every year.
As I mentioned, I've been pretty much in the studio, in and out of the studio all day, and really only going over to the park to see if I would see anything exceptional. I didn't see anything exceptional, but I tend to think everything is exceptional. The most ordinary birds are exceptional if they're behaving nicely. Now it's 5 p.m. Just outside of Beijing. So as it stands at this time, what are you prepared to cough up your numbers for the day?
Actually, I don't know exactly how many species I've seen today. I estimate that probably on about 80, something like that. But I don't know exactly. I'll have to wait till I get home and tot it all up. But I think it's about 80 species, which is a pretty good total for a day in May in Beijing. And I'm just happy to be out. Like you, it doesn't matter if you see a rare bird or a common bird. I think one of my favorite quotes from birding is by Ken Kaufman, the famous US birder, and he says, if you enjoy birding, you're a good birder. And if you really enjoy birding, then you're a really good birder. And I love that quote because, that's what it's all about.
Well, I tend to think that the best bird could be a big brown bird, a little brown bird, a noisy white bird. Any bird is a good bird.
Absolutely.
And it's just nice if you can tell what it is and learn a bit about it. That's the whole thing.
Every bird has a story, and some of the species that I'm seeing today. You think about where they've come from and where they're going to and how far they've traveled, and it's just you have so much respect for these tiny creatures that can fit in the palm of your hand, and the distances they're traveling, and they don't need any vaccine passports or visas or anything, so I admire
exactly
them a lot.
Right. And sort of the point of making the appointment to speak again this afternoon is to follow up a little bit on what your podcast or your episode of the Bird Emergency was all about, and that was the common cuckoo and the Beijing swift, and the projects that have really brought the wider community, together with the bird nerds of Beijing, and seen the birds making use of historical buildings, nesting right in the city of, as you said, the largest city and the largest economy in the world. Where are those projects at now, Terry?
Well, the Swift, start with the Swifts. The Swift project, as you know, we've tracked them to South Africa and back, and we've got a number of schools now putting up nest boxes on their campuses, and some of them have been successful in attracting swifts. And obviously the issue we've had here over the last few decades is a lot of the old buildings that the swifts love to nest in have been replaced with new buildings that have straight lines and shiny glass, and not really friendly for the Beijing swift. So the kids are doing a lot, putting up the boxes, and of course they also wrote to the boss of one of the big building companies in Beijing, Soho, and they had an audience with the chairman and explained to him about the swift, the incredible journey, the lifestyle, how the population's gone down, what the schools are doing, and they asked him to help. And he made these commitments. He said, I didn't know about the swift, and we've been making buildings for 20 years to make people's lives better, and we realize now we should be making buildings not only for people but also for wildlife. And he put up 200 nest boxes on his own buildings, promised to integrate into the design of new buildings room for swifts, and to promote biodiversity among the building sector in Beijing. So that was really, really fantastic. And then just last week...
Sorry, Terry, can I just stop you there? Has that been happening? Like, have other building developers and designers that have taken that on board? Are they public with that?
I haven't seen much evidence of other companies doing that yet, but there is, because of course, this year China's hosting the UN Biodiversity Conference, and so there's quite a lot of discussion among businesses about what they can do to support the biodiversity, the outcomes of the biodiversity conference that we hope will come out of Kunming in October. And so there's a lot of discussion right now about what companies can do. And in Beijing, of course, one of the things, certainly in the building sector, is to consider the Beijing swift. And just one sort of positive update, which I think would not have happened, had this project not happened, was that they're now planning some big renovations of some of the old buildings in Beijing, which are the big swift colonies. And initially they were going to do this renovation work during the summer when the swifts are here, but some volunteers made it known to them that if you do it at this time, you're going to interfere with the swifts. So last week we had a big meeting where the government called together the management of these buildings, one or two academics, ornithological academics. I was lucky to be invited as well. And we made the case to say, look, ideally, you do the swifts are only here for 3 months of the year, so ideally you can do the renovation work outside that time. If that's not possible, there are things you can do to maintain access. The key thing, the key thing is to maintain access for the swifts to their nest site, so that they can tolerate quite a lot of noise. I spoke to quite a few European experts who have experience on this, and so able to give them some really good advice about how to take this forward. And at the end of the meeting, I was impressed that everyone said, look, we need to do what we can to manage this in a way that's not going to impact the swift. So that's a huge step forward that I think would not have happened 5 or 10 years ago. So really, really happy about
that. And to think that was all from an innocent question from a schoolgirl.
Yeah.
Just saying, why don't you just design it for the swift as well?
Yeah.
No, that's a beautiful story. And the cuckoos.
Well, the cuckoos now, we've unfortunately we've lost our last cuckoo that we've been tracking. They don't live very long, so we've lost all of the cuckoos that we initially tracked, both from Beijing and from Mongolia. But another good story there, is how the kids in Mongolia who named one of the cuckoos, one of their cuckoos went to Socotra Island, which is an island just off the coast of the Horn of Africa, off Somalia. It actually belongs to Yemen. And as you know, there's a civil war going on in Yemen, and Socotra Island is a World Heritage Site. It's got some amazing and unique biodiversity. But it's under threat, because of the situation. So the school kids in Mongolia actually wrote to schools in Socotra to tell them that their cuckoo that they'd named in Mongolia had stopped off in Socotra, and they wanted to thank the people of Socotra for ensuring this cuckoo's safe passage, because it then went on into Africa. And the Socotran school kids wrote back, to say, oh, wow, this is amazing. We didn't know about that cuckoos came from Mongolia to here. And they then told the Mongolian school children about some of the special birds and wildlife that they have in Socotra. And so they're having this correspondence now about wildlife, connecting a country with an island that you wouldn't normally think there would be any connection. But that's what's wonderful about migratory birds. They make these connections and connect people and countries in a way that is impossible otherwise. So some really good stories coming from the cuckoos as well. And I think since we've tracked the Mongolian cuckoos also, there's been some cuckoos tracked in Kamchatka in Russia, which actually go all the way to Namibia, and that is as far as we know, the longest migration of any land bird. So cuckoos are amazing creatures. I'm actually still waiting for the first one to come back. They're pretty late arriving here. They normally come back towards the end of May. So one of the later migrants, and still haven't heard one yet this year. So really looking forward to hearing my first one.
Fingers crossed. The fact that the migratory birds connect different cultures and vastly different geographical populations is amazing. But what I love is that it begins that understanding and the questioning of habitat, what habitat actually is, and then that concept of what biodiversity is, so that if they understand that the cuckoo needs an appropriate habitat, but it needs the insects, and so you stop thinking of garden pests and you start thinking of food for visiting birds, which it's just great. And
no, I think birds, migratory bird. I've just got an Ammer falcon just hovering. I don't know if you can see that, but there's an Ammer falcon, a nice male. That's just come from Africa, So it's on its way further north. So that's another amazing journey. But yeah, you're right. I think migratory birds are great ambassadors for wildlife, and they can connect people to to nature in a way that it's hard with other species like insects. Mammals are quite hard to see, but birds are very mobile. They're very visible, so they're great ambassadors for nature. And I think when you start to learn about their stories, you can't help but to be to fall in love with nature. And I think that's the first step. Once you fall in love, everyone wants to protect what they love. So that's about how you build support for policies that are going to protect and restore nature.
Absolutely. And you've been in Beijing now a long time. So I think it's fair to say that you know the place well. Do you think that trend that I certainly feel here in Australia of wanting to protect biodiversity and to understand it amongst common folk is growing the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I would say certainly I've been here 10 years now, and I would say I describe it as an environmental awakening in China, definitely, because I think they had years of breakneck economic growth, sort of at all costs, and that came at a big cost to the environment, and that was evident in terms of air pollution and water pollution and soil pollution. And of course, as people get more wealthy, they start to care more about the environment, and that's certainly happened in the time that I've been here. And I've seen a huge explosion of new NGOs, community NGOs, single species NGOs looking after gibbons in Yunnan or tigers in northeast China or whatever it might be. And so the number of young people now who really care about the environment and are interested is growing very, very fast. I mean, it was from a low baseline, so I think there's still quite a way to go to catch up to some of the more progressive Western countries, but it's certainly changing at pace here. So it's positive, and I see a lot of young people now in Beijing doing amazing things, coming up with amazing ideas and working really hard to engage people. And so I mean, I'm optimistic. It's hard to be optimistic globally when you see the trends, what's happening. But you have to think that things can change, and I think they are changing. And we just got to encourage that change as fast as possible everywhere.
I get my fingers crossed, thinking maybe China and the US and when India emerge from their tragedy at the moment, maybe it might only take 3 leaders to say we're going to make a big effort that drags the rest of the world not towards a mass extinction crisis, but towards a biodiversity triumph. Fingers crossed. Now, Terry, I know you've got to be somewhere shortly, but I wanted to ask you a similar question about the awareness of microplastics in the environment and single-use plastic as packaging. Is that a thing in Beijing?
Yeah, definitely. People are becoming more and more aware of it and care about it. And recently the government has introduced here waste sorting and compulsory in some places. So people need to think about their waste more, and there are fines if you don't put the right waste in the right bins. There's a lot of talk about single-use plastics, a lot of initiatives about encouraging reuse rather than using single-use plastics. So there's a lot happening here, just as it is in the rest of the world. I think one of the biggest issues here is the food deliveries. That so many people get food deliveries now because it's so cheap to have it delivered, and nearly always it's single-use plastic bags and single-use chopsticks, single-use everything. So that is a trend that's taking us in the wrong direction. But I think there's a lot of work going on right now in that sector. to see what they can do to make it more sustainable. So I'm optimistic. But yeah, I think the single thing that we have to do globally is to value nature. We don't value it in our economies. We don't value the services it provides to us. But I think there's more and more recognition now that we're reliant on nature. There's a recent report showed, I think from the World Economic Forum, that showed that half of the global economy, $44 trillion, is heavily or moderately dependent on nature or its services. And yet the cost of protecting our most important biodiversity and the services it provides is estimated to be about 1% of GDP. So if you look at it that way, 1% investment for a 50% of the global economy, that's a pretty good investment. So, for me, it's a no-brainer.
That's right. It is a no-brainer. Terry, what's coming up for you in the short term with Birding Beijing? Of course, everyone should be following you on Twitter.
Well, yeah, I think the big focus right now, of course, here is the biodiversity conference that's happening in October. So, this is the point at which governments are due to agree a new framework for slowing and halting biodiversity loss, looking out for the next 10 years and beyond. So there's a lot of work going into the preparations for that, for the agreement. There's a lot of different aspects to that, of course, and obviously financing is a key part of it. And my work that I do with the Paulson Institute on that issue is keeping me busy right now. So I'm trying to sort of straddle the policy world and the sort of practical conservation world. And yeah, there's plenty to do on both sides. So I'm certainly not going to be twiddling my thumbs for the next few months. But it's all good.
No.
I love being busy and love working on these issues. So for me, it's an honour to be doing that.
Well, it's World Migratory Bird Day. It's the global big day. Congratulations on approximately 80 for the day. But I'm sure you would like to join me in having a bird emergency birthday wishes to Sir David Attenborough. Do you know that?
I didn't know that. It's his birthday today. Well, that's very special. Yeah. He's been a huge influence on me, just as many other people.
And the one of the up and coming ambassadors for the natural world in the UK, Maya Bird Girl Bambrick. So no, it's Maya Craig. Beg your pardon.
Craig, your
pardon. Yeah,
well, she's doing amazing work.
Yeah,
particularly around diversity issues and biodiversity. So yeah, two great people at very different parts of their career. Both doing amazing things. So yeah, so happy birthday to both of them.
Yeah. And to anybody watching a few days later or weeks later or months later, my message is persistence pays. Look how long it's taken David Attenborough to really get noticed for the message, not for the programs and for the animals, but for the message that he's been pushing for the best part of 60 years. And now we've got people like Maya and Greta who are persistent, and they're not bullying, they're not threatening, they are just persistent and consistent about a message. I just hope that everybody takes that on board, and we can all make a point consistently, persistently, and apply the pressure day after day after day after day. So there we go. There's my political message, Terry.
Well, thank you. I think the important thing is, everyone can do something, whether it's something big, something small, doesn't matter. I think as long as you do something, doing something is better than nothing. And I think that's an important message. So yeah, it's a good note to end on.
That's right. It's the motto of the show. You can't do everything, but do something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
okay.
Terry, I hope we can catch up maybe in a couple of months and find out how the preparations for the biodiversity conference are going, and then maybe afterwards you'll give us a a rundown on what you think the results were.
Sure. Yeah. Be happy to do that. We'll keep in touch.
Terrific. Thanks again, Terry.
All right. Cheers.
Bird Emergency.
Bye-bye.
See you later, everyone.